In the quiet stillness of the early morning, before the world awakens to the clamor of productivity and the relentless march of progress, there is a moment of profound reflection that every leader must eventually face. Imagine a figure standing by a window overlooking a waking city. Whether it be in the vast urban expanses of the American continent or the historic skylines of Europe, this individual, burdened by the weight of expectations and the intricate machinery of an organization, often contemplates the unseen threads that hold everything together. For a long time, the narrative of success has been dominated by the image of the solitary genius, the visionary who commands from a distance, armed with nothing but intellect and iron will. But as the sun begins to crest the horizon, illuminating the streets below, a different truth starts to emerge. It is a truth not found in spreadsheets or quarterly reports, but in the subtle, often overlooked art of human connection. The air is thick with the anticipation of the day's first interactions, and it is here, in the quiet before the storm, that the realization takes root. Leadership is not a solo performance conducted in a vacuum. It is a symphony of voices, a delicate dance of influence and empathy. The path to greatness is not paved with cold calculations alone, but with the warmth of shared understanding and the strength of relationships built in the most unexpected of places. There is an unspoken power in the casual greeting, the shared coffee, and the unpretentious conversation that happens in the hallway. These moments, which might seem trivial to the untrained eye, are actually the bedrock of a legacy. The question that hangs in the cool morning air is not how many tasks will be completed, but how many bridges will be built. As the first sounds of life begin to filter through the glass, there is a subtle shift in perspective, a dawning awareness that the most powerful tool in a leader's arsenal might not be a strategy at all, but the simple, profound ability to truly see and be seen by others. This is the beginning of a journey into the heart of influence, where the smallest interaction can spark the greatest transformation. Expanding outward from that solitary window, the world reveals itself as a complex tapestry of interconnected needs and systemic challenges. In every corner of the globe, from the bustling financial districts of England to the emerging markets of Latin America, the cry for effective leadership resonates with a desperate urgency. It is visible in governments that struggle to find a coherent voice, in corporations that buckle under the weight of global competition, and in community organizations that strive to provide a safety net with dwindling resources. The landscape of the modern era is fraught with complexity, where the old ways of command and control no longer suffice to navigate the turbulent waters of change. In the home region, as much as in the most distant territories, the same patterns emerge. Teams that lose their way due to a lack of consistency, public sectors that operate at the very edge of their capacity, and institutions once considered unshakable that are now rocked by scandals born of a vacuum in moral guidance. This is the broader context in which the leader must operate, a world that is both interconnected and paradoxically fragmented. The foundation of any endeavor, whether it is a small local startup or a multinational conglomerate, rests upon the quality of the people who inhabit it and the leaders who guide them. History has shown that when leadership fails to ground itself in the human element, the structures it builds are fragile, prone to collapse at the first sign of genuine crisis. The thematic landscape of this exploration is one of profound responsibility, where every thought, action, and word uttered over a lifetime serves as a preparatory phase for the role of a leader. It is a landscape that demands more than just technical proficiency. It requires a deep, intuitive understanding of the social fabric. As the narrative broadens to encompass schools, hospitals, and even the smallest family units, the central question begins to crystallize. In a world increasingly defined by digital interfaces and distant transactions, how does one maintain the essential human touch that transforms a group of individuals into a focused, motivated force? The tension between the scale of global challenges and the intimacy of individual connection becomes the driving force of the story, hinting at a secret that the most successful leaders have always known but rarely articulated. Into this complex world step the individuals who carry the mantle of leadership, each bringing their own unique history, temperament, and hidden struggles. Some appear on the global stage with high-visibility roles, their names synonymous with innovation and wealth, while others operate in the quiet corners of society. The dedicated school coordinator, the tireless community organizer, or the head of a large, bustling family. Regardless of the scale, the core challenge remains remarkably consistent. The protagonist of this narrative is not a single person, but the archetypal leader who is constantly negotiating the space between their internal world and the external demands of their role. This character often grapples with a fundamental internal friction: the belief that they must have all the answers versus the reality that they are entirely dependent on the cooperation and goodwill of others. There is a specific philosophical tension at play here: the struggle between the self as a driver of results and the self as a member of a community. Many find themselves standing at a crossroads, having mastered the technical skills of their trade, but feeling a growing sense of isolation and inadequacy when it comes to the people they lead. They may have been mentored in the high-stakes environments of global banks or international organizations, yet they find that the most difficult task is not managing a multi-million-dollar budget, but managing the expectations and emotions of a single disgruntled stakeholder. The conflict is introduced not through a grand battle, but through the realization that many of the tools in their leadership arsenal have been left to rust, underutilized in favor of safer, more clinical approaches. As they look at their peers and predecessors, they see the wreckage of those who clung to their weaknesses, refusing to adapt to the human-centric requirements of their positions. The story begins to move as the leader starts to reflect on their own patterns of communication, questioning whether their focus on efficiency has actually been a mask for a fear of genuine engagement. A small, almost imperceptible shift occurs, a decision to look beyond the task and into the eyes of the person standing across from them, signaling that the journey toward a more profound and effective way of leading has finally begun. As the leader moves through the day, the stakes begin to rise, and the narrative momentum picks up speed. It is no longer enough to simply recognize the importance of people. The leader must now navigate the friction of real-world interactions, where the outcomes are far from guaranteed. The early momentum is driven by a series of mounting tensions that highlight the fragility of success. Consider the delicate relationship with a financial institution in the American continent or a crucial supplier in Spain. In these high-pressure scenarios, the leader realizes that a lack of rapport is more than just an social oversight. It is a strategic liability. Without a foundation of trust, a bank manager is less likely to gamble on a bold new idea, and a supplier is less likely to show leniency when the inevitable cash flow issues arise. The emotional stakes are raised when the leader looks at their own team and sees not a unified force, but a collection of individuals who feel undervalued and misunderstood. This friction creates a palpable sense of unease, as the leader realizes that their vision, no matter how brilliant, will remain a mere hallucination if they cannot inspire others to carry it forward. The contrast between the cold, hard goals of the organization and the fluid, emotional needs of the human beings within it creates a deepening layer of complexity. Every interaction becomes a test of the leader's ability to bridge this gap. The pressure builds as stakeholders, investors, partners, and employees alike demand more than just results. They demand a sense of connection and purpose. The leader is pushed to move faster, think more clearly, and communicate with more authenticity. The moment that propels the story forward is the realization that networking is not a dirty word or a cynical exercise in manipulation, but a vital lifeblood of the organization. It is the realization that the strength of their career and the very survival of their mission depends entirely on the web of relationships they have the courage to weave. The narrative now shifts from a conceptual understanding to an urgent, practical necessity, as the leader prepares to step out of their comfort zone and into the messy, unpredictable, and ultimately rewarding world of human engagement. With the realization burning bright, the leader takes their first deliberate steps into the arena of human connection. The shift is not dramatic at first. It begins with small, intentional acts that feel almost uncomfortable in their simplicity. A handwritten note to a long-neglected contact. A phone call made not out of necessity, but out of genuine curiosity about how someone is doing. A coffee meeting scheduled not to extract a favor, but to offer one. Each of these micro-gestures feels foreign, even awkward, to a mind trained to optimize for efficiency and output. Yet slowly, something begins to shift. The leader starts to see the landscape of their professional world differently. Colleagues who were once viewed purely through the lens of their functional roles begin to reveal unexpected dimensions. A supplier in Spain who shares a passion for innovation. A bank manager in Sao Paulo who once overcame the same kind of organizational skepticism that now threatens the leader's own vision. These discoveries are not coincidental. They are the direct result of choosing to listen more and transact less. The leader begins to understand that every relationship holds a hidden depth, accessible only to those willing to invest the time to look beneath the surface. However, the initial momentum brings with it a sobering lesson. Not every outreach is met with warmth, and not every attempt at connection lands as intended. Some doors remain closed. Some conversations feel performative, hollow, a reminder that sincerity cannot be faked indefinitely. The leader encounters the first real friction of this new approach, the gap between wanting to connect and actually knowing how. It becomes clear that building meaningful relationships is a skill, not an instinct, and like any skill, it demands practice, patience, and a willingness to fail in the attempt. This is where the leader begins to wrestle with a deeper question. If connection is a skill, then it can be developed. But at what cost? The calendar fills with meetings, the inbox swells with follow-ups, and the emotional bandwidth required to show up authentically for every interaction starts to feel finite. The early wins are real, but so is the growing weight of sustaining them. The leader senses, for the first time, that the very philosophy they have embraced may carry hidden demands that were not visible from the outside. The energy required to build a network of trust is not the same as the energy required to maintain one, and the distinction begins to matter enormously. By the end of this phase, the leader stands at a threshold. The proof of concept is there. Genuine connection does unlock doors, soften resistance, and energize teams in ways that no memo or KPI ever could. But the question that lingers, unresolved and pressing, is one of sustainability and scale. The leader has learned to walk into the arena. Now they must learn to stay in it without losing themselves in the process. The path to masterful leadership is rarely a straight line, and a significant complication soon arises, challenging the leader's newly adopted philosophy. This complication is the realization that human connection cannot be manufactured or automated. It requires an investment of time and emotional energy that is often in short supply. The leader faces a new layer of conflict, the paradox of scale. In a world where they might be responsible for hundreds or even thousands of stakeholders across different regions, from the home region to far-flung offices in Europe, how do they maintain a close connection that feels genuine? The tension is particularly acute for those who are naturally more reserved or introverted. For such an individual, the advice to engage more can feel like a demand to betray their own nature, leading to a sense of exhaustion and a questioning of their suitability for the role. Conversely, the extroverted leader faces the opposite challenge, the risk of creating a network that is a mile wide but only an inch deep, where quantity is mistaken for quality. This creates a moment of unresolved tension. The leader begins to see the flaws in their previous approach, but the new path seems fraught with the danger of burnout or inauthenticity. They are tested by the realization that some relationships are harder to build than others, and that no amount of charisma can bridge a fundamental lack of shared values. The narrative reaches a point where the leader must confront the myth of the numbers, the idea that having more contacts is always better. They are forced to ask, what does it mean to truly get along with someone in a professional context? Is it about frequency of contact, or is it something more elusive, rooted in mutual support and common ground? The complication deepens as they realize that their success is being held back by their own remaining shadows: shyness, a lack of proactivity, or a simple failure to keep in touch. The narrative tension is at its peak as the leader stands at the edge of this realization, knowing that to move forward, they must not only change their habits, but also their very understanding of what it means to be a person of influence. Intensity builds as the leader approaches the turning point of this journey. The pacing of the day accelerates, and every encounter seems to carry more weight than the last. The weight of the stakes is no longer abstract. It is felt in the silence of a boardroom and the expectant gaze of a junior employee. The leader begins to see the world as a complex map of human interests and potential synergies. There is a sense of mounting pressure to move beyond the superficial and to create a strategic infrastructure for their relationships. They begin to understand that they cannot leave their success to chance or to the whims of their natural temperament. The inevitability of the situation becomes clear. If they do not master the art of the unpretentious conversation, they will forever be at the mercy of forces they cannot control. The emotional focus narrows down to a single, powerful concept: the stakeholder map. This is not just a list of names. It is a visualization of the leader's world, a web of dependencies and opportunities that spans from the home region to the global markets of the American continent. The pressure mounts as the leader starts to categorize their world, identifying the mentors, the clients, the partners, and the investors who hold the keys to their future. There is a growing sense of urgency to act, to reach out, and to solidify these bonds before they wither away from neglect. The narrative is now building toward a moment of transformation, where the leader will finally discard their old, isolated self and embrace a more integrated, connected way of being. The air is thick with the anticipation of this shift, as the leader prepares to translate their internal realizations into a concrete plan of action. The transition from thought to execution is the final hurdle, and the stakes could not be higher. Every name on their list represents a potential ally in the face of the difficulties that surely lie ahead, and the realization of this fact brings a sense of both clarity and profound responsibility. The climax of the journey arrives in a moment of critical revelation. It happens not on a grand stage, but in the quiet, focused space where the leader finally sits down to map out their world. With a pen in hand and a blank slate before them, they begin to draw the lines of connection that define their professional and personal existence. This is the moment where the abstract concept of networking is transformed into a vivid, strategic reality. They see the names of people in the American continent who have supported them, the colleagues in Europe who have challenged them, and the partners in the home region who have shared their vision. This exercise is a profound emotional peak, as it forces the leader to acknowledge the sheer number of lives that intersect with their own. They realize that their stakeholder map is actually a map of their own influence and responsibility. The turning point is the shift from seeing these people as mere names on a list to seeing them as the vital components of a living, breathing ecosystem. The revelation is that their career is not a ladder they climb alone, but a web they spin with others. This realization redefines everything. The fear of bothering people or being too proactive vanishes, replaced by a clear-eyed understanding that these connections are the very fabric of their leadership. They see why a bank manager might say yes, why a supplier might wait, and why an employee might give their all. It is all tied back to the strength of the bond they have cultivated. The climax is the internal collapse of the old, self-reliant ego and the birth of a more humble, connected, and ultimately more powerful version of the leader. They see that being a successful leader is not about being the loudest voice in the room, but about having the most resonant connections. As the map is completed, the leader feels a sense of profound clarity and empowerment. They are no longer a solitary figure against the world. They are the center of a vibrant, supportive community. The trajectory of their story has been irrevocably changed, moving from isolation to integration, and from chance to intention. In the immediate aftermath of this revelation, a wave of transformative energy sweeps through the leader's world. The first consequence is a shift in the atmosphere of their daily environment. There is a newfound lightness in their step and a different quality to their gaze. The weight that once felt like a burden, the weight of names, faces, and expectations, now feels like a source of strength. They take the first tentative steps of their new plan, reaching out to someone they haven't spoken to in years, perhaps an old colleague or a distant mentor. The response is immediate and heartening, confirming that the threads of connection were always there, merely waiting to be tightened. The situational shift is palpable. The office feels less like a series of cubicles and more like a network of potential. The leader begins to schedule those lunches, those coffee dates, and those quick messages that they once dismissed as distractions. Each small action creates a ripple effect, improving the morale of those around them and strengthening the foundations of their projects. There is a brief, quiet pause in the narrative, a moment for the weight of these events to settle. The leader sits in their office, looking at the newly created map, and feels a sense of peace that has been absent for a long time. They have moved from the frantic energy of doing to the purposeful energy of being in relation to others. The raw emotional shift is one of relief. The myth of the solitary leader has been debunked, and in its place is a more sustainable and fulfilling reality. The world hasn't changed, but the leader's place within it has been fundamentally recalibrated. This space of reflection allows the new habits to take root, ensuring that they are not just a passing phase, but a permanent change in the way they navigate their role and their life. As the days turn into weeks, the deeper consequences of this transformation begin to manifest in every aspect of the leader's life. The internal shift toward a relationship-centric mindset leads to external resolutions that were previously unimaginable. A difficult negotiation with a partner in Latin America which once would have been a source of immense stress, is now handled with a sense of ease and mutual respect, because the ground had been prepared by months of unpretentious conversations. The transformation is not just in how the leader acts, but in how they are perceived by others. They have become the person that people admire and want to learn from, not because of their title, but because of the way they make others feel seen and valued. The emotional settling that occurs is profound. The leader finds that they are more resilient in the face of setbacks, knowing they have a network of support to fall back on. They see their team members growing more proactive, inspired by a leader who takes the time to understand their motivations and challenges. The lessons of the stakeholder map have become second nature, a natural part of their daily rhythm. They no longer see networking as a task to be checked off a list, but as a continuous, life-giving process of building community. The resolution of the story is found in this quiet, steady growth. The leader has successfully integrated their technical skills with their human ones, creating a balanced and effective leadership style that is both powerful and compassionate. The transition toward closure is seamless, as the narrative reflects on how far the leader has come, from the solitary figure by the window to the heart of a thriving, interconnected web of human endeavor. The transformation is complete, and the future looks not like a daunting challenge, but like a series of opportunities for further connection and shared success. Drawing together the various threads of this journey, a coherent and powerful reflection begins to emerge. The essence of leadership, it is now clear, lies in the quality of one's interactions. The story has moved from the personal to the universal, illuminating a broader thematic significance that applies to any context, from a family in the home region to a global corporation. The lesson is that leadership is an act of service and connection, a way of being that honors the inherent worth of every individual in the network. The unpretentious conversation is revealed as a revolutionary act, a simple yet profound way to dismantle the barriers of hierarchy and ego. It is a reminder that in an increasingly complex and technological world, the most sophisticated tool at our disposal remains the human heart. The philosophical significance of the journey is the realization that we are all stakeholders in each other's success. No one achieves greatness in isolation, and no mission can be truly fulfilled without the active support and goodwill of a community. The leader's map is a symbol of this interdependence, a testament to the fact that our lives are woven together in ways we often fail to recognize. The narrative threads of effort, fear, revelation, and transformation are all tied together in a single, resonant idea: that to lead is to love the people you lead enough to build genuine bridges with them. This reflection prepares the listener for the final message, creating a sense of completion and a renewed understanding of the true nature of influence. The journey has not been about learning a new skill, but about remembering a fundamental human truth that has been obscured by the noise of modern life. The story concludes with a final, lingering insight that leaves a sense of clarity and peace. The journey of the leader, which began in the quiet of a morning and moved through the complexities of a globalized world, ends with a simple, reflective truth. Success is not measured by the height of the tower one builds, but by the strength of the foundation, and that foundation is made entirely of human relationships. The closing reflection is one of quiet empowerment. Anyone, regardless of their position or personality, can become a leader of profound influence by simply choosing to value the people around them. The unpretentious conversation, the genuine interest in another's well-being, and the intentional effort to stay connected are the true hallmarks of a legacy that lasts. As the narrative fades, it leaves behind the image of the stakeholder map, not as a cold strategic document, but as a warm, vibrant record of a life well lived and a mission well shared. The broader lesson is that we are all leaders in our own spheres, and our greatest power lies in our ability to inspire, organize, and motivate through the simple act of being present for one another. The final message is one of hope and invitation. To look at the people in one's own world, in the American continent, in Europe, or in the home region, and to see not just faces, but potential partners in a shared journey. The essence of the story is captured in the realization that every interaction is an opportunity to strengthen the web of human connection. With this understanding, the listener is left to contemplate their own map, their own relationships, and the quiet, transformative power of the next conversation they will have. The path forward is clear, and it begins with a single, simple, and unpretentious greeting.